We live in interesting times for the headlines. The final death toll caused by Hurricane Dorian after it devastated the northern Bahamas could be staggering, a government minister said as the storm moves up the U.S. coast. Robert Mugabe, the former guerrilla leader turned despot who held onto power in Zimbabwe for 37 years until forced out by the military, has died at aged 95. Tensions eased between twin African powerhouses, South Africa and Nigeria, after Pretoria temporarily closed its diplomatic missions in the rival state following a wave of attacks on foreign-owned stores there that claimed 10 lives. And Philippine authorities have charged an Ohio woman with trying to smuggle a 6-day-old infant out of the country in a bag she wore around her waist as she tried to board a flight out of the country. I'm Alma Angeles, wherever you're watching from around the world. Thank you very much for joining us, and now to the news. The final death toll from the devastation unleashed by Hurricane Dorian in the Bahamas could be staggering, according to a government minister, as the storm headed for the U.S. East Coast. Bahamian Prime Minister Hubert Minnis told CNN Thursday that at least 30 people were killed in the storm, which caused what he called generational devastation. Extra morticians and refrigerated coolers to store bodies were being sent to the region to help authorities cope with the deadly impact, according to Health Minister Dwayne Sands. Of the final number killed, he declared, "Let me say that I believe the number will be staggering," quote. Dorian was a Category 5 hurricane, the highest on the 5-level wind scale, when it slammed into the northern Bahamas on Sunday, leaving a trail of immense destruction. Thousands have been left homeless, while the United Nations said 70,000 more were in immediate need of aid. People on Abaco Island in the Bahamas are worried about their future and the reconstruction of the island.
The house was right there, then we landed right through there. Yeah. And that's the way it is. Where we're stuck for now. We got plan to move out, but I don't know when.
I honestly believe Abaco is finished. I think Abaco will not recover until the next 10 years, like fully recover, because everything is gone. Absolutely everything is gone. So in order to have money, you need people to invest. I don't think people are going to invest anymore because of the devastation. So it's a chance that I don't think people are willing to take, and right now Abaco need external investors.
Oh, it can take a long time. Nothing is impossible, but it can take a lot to recover, because we lost, you see it? So, but 100% devastating all over. I lost my home, my apartments, and I'm inland, so imagine these people on, you know.
Me, I supposed to live, but I can't. But no water, no food. You and me, nobody can stay there, because if you stay there, but couple days pass, but you very feel sick. You and me, but my plan that's leave, find some places to live.
If they want to rebuild, we'll come back. But if they, I ain't gonna start. All electricity, no water, nothing. It doesn't make sense. All them houses break. Abaco now is like a ghost town.
Meanwhile, survivors in the Bahamas started the long cleanup after Hurricane Dorian ravaged the islands. The blue sun-kissed Skies, more usually associated with a tropical paradise, have returned, yet a glance across Marsh Harbor offers up nothing but horror, the grim aftermath of a cataclysm. Much of the severe damage appears to be concentrated on the Abaco Islands, a chain of islands in the northern Bahamas known as a boating destination. The Prime Minister said that parts of Abaco are 60% destroyed.
This door blew in during the second half of the storm. That's hurricane glass, just totally blew in and exploded.
A number of other organizations are also collecting donations for the Bahamas, including the American Red Cross, AmeriCares, and World Central Kitchen, the nonprofit founded by celebrity chef Jose Andres, who has been on the ground in the Bahamas and shared images of the devastation.
But the destruction is total. Boats that were left in this island, they are above home, so 5-10 meters inland, 20 meters inland. We saw the same in Mexico Beach. We open restaurants, and restaurants are about restoration, and you restore the body and the soul. And I guess what I do is use the restoring, hopefully help restore the faith and the soul and the hope of people, one meal at a time.
Meanwhile, the Miami-based National Hurricane Center downgraded Dorian to a Category 1 storm as it headed to North Carolina. It warned that although weakening, Dorian was still packing winds of 90 miles per hour or 150 kilometers per hour, with some areas of the Carolina coast forecast to see dangerous storm surges of up to 7 feet and between 6 and 12 inches of rain. The storm brushed the North Carolina coast late Thursday night after leaving a trail of damage and flooding from its journey up along South Carolina. The National Hurricane Center said in its 11 p.m. update. At 2 a.m., the National Weather Service reported that the storm center will move near or over the coast in the next several hours. While Dorian is already affecting North Carolina, its impact from its time along the South Carolina coast is clear. More than 230,000 now have power outages were reported by coastal South Carolina customers, and most were in the Charleston area, where more than 120,000 people had lost power. Dozens of roads were flooded, and watches and warnings for tornadoes, flash floods, and storm surge were growing north of Myrtle Beach into North Carolina. Many residents of coastal Carolina heeded evacuation orders, while others battened down their homes with plywood and prepared to ride out the tempest. The storm was expected to move to southeast New England Friday night and Saturday morning, and then across Nova Scotia late on Saturday. Meanwhile, life slowly started to return to normal in downtown Melbourne Beach on Wednesday as monster storm Dorian spared most of the Florida coast with little damage in its parallel crawl to the U.S. coast. Take a look.
Pretty normal. I mean, for a storm. It wasn't really like the storm that you would expect from Category 5 that they've been terrorizing us with for a week. Gusty winds, pretty light rain actually, no flooding, no damage. As you see, it just burned all the sable bombs.
Locals have started clearing up debris from their yards, and shop owners were seen retrieving protective boarding to reopen for business. Dorian, which lasted as a Category 5 hurricane for over 24 hours after reaching 185 miles per hour winds while battering the Bahamas, was downgraded to a Category 1 now after decreasing wind strength during its slow crawl towards the U.S. coast. Dorian lashed Florida's Brevard County coast during late Tuesday and the early hours of Wednesday, leaving mostly superficial damage and beach erosion in its wake. Meanwhile, a tornado appeared in the sky in Wilmington, North Carolina. Take a look. Now, the National Weather Service said on Twitter that it was spotted in the morning as Hurricane Dorian threatened the U.S. East Coast after ripping across the Bahamas. Hurricane Dorian's winds and rain are damaging enough, but its outer bands are also spinning off tornadoes. A North Carolina beach town said it experienced damage from a tornado that was spun off from Hurricane Dorian as the storm approached Thursday morning. Officials in Emerald Isle said in a news release on its website that the waterspout, or a tornado that formed over a body of water, touched down around 9 a.m. local time, and that caused severe damage to the Boardwalk RV Park and the surrounding area near Islander and Reed Drives. Boardwalk RV Park suffered the most severe damage. No injuries were reported. To California now, the Tenaja fire, now burning into its second day, has scorched about 2,000 acres in the Murrieta area and has prompted evacuations as well as road and school closures. Take a look. The Murrieta Valley School District announced it would be closed, and Riverside public health officials put out a health warning urging the residents in the affected areas to limit outdoor activity due to smoke and ash. According to Riverside Fire Department, around 800 personnel are now working on putting out the Tenaja fire, which blazed through 1,400 acres in less than a day. On Wednesday, the Riverside County Fire Department issued a mandatory evacuation order to residents along the Trial Circle in La Cresta as well as the Santa Rosa Plateau Visitor Center. As of Thursday, U.S. time, the Fire Department expanded the order to residents in Copper Canyon, south of Calle del Oso Oro, between Clinton Keith Road and Murrieta Creek Drive, as firefighters work on containing the fires. Fire officials have not determined what caused the fire. Flooding and landslides in central Vietnam have left several people dead and inundated thousands of homes after a tropical depression lashed several provinces with heavy rains and intense winds. Take a look. Robert Mugabe, Zimbabwe's first post-independence leader, has died at the age of 95. Mugabe ruled Zimbabwe from 1980 to 2017, and during his time in office, the country went from independence to recession, then economic collapse. Mugabe's early years were praised for broadening access to health and education for the black majority, but his controversial land reform program sparked an economic collapse, and his latter years were marked by rights abuses and corruption. Take a look.
Robert Mugabe once quipped he'd rule Zimbabwe until he turned 100. He very nearly achieved this goal. Mugabe first came to power in 1980, a hero in the fight against white minority rule, and a legend even in the West. In office, he was credited with education reforms and forcing reconciliation between blacks and whites. But even then, Mugabe's reputation for repression had begun.
For the first few years, I think you have to say that Mugabe was a very wise leader. There were some major catastrophes, particularly by the use of too much force to put down what he thought was rebellion in the west side of the country. But really, for the first 10, perhaps even 15 years, Mugabe led the country very, very well.
Mugabe's efforts at reconciliation faded quickly, epitomized by the seizure of white-owned farms. Introduced in 2000, this radical policy was used to reward his own supporters, few of whom knew much about farming. The result was famine in a country once known as the breadbasket of Africa. Yet Mugabe would go on to win elections several times, ignoring each international outcry that followed the widespread use of violence to intimidate his opponents. As he entered his 90s, he lost none of his disdain for political enemies.
We will fight the white man. We will fight until the last of us falls, naked, with nothing.
Mugabe continued to enjoy popularity with his party and to win elections. Though in 2008, polls were marked by violence against the opposition, and the 2012 vote was likely rigged. Having become the world's oldest president, he was finally forced to relinquish power on the 21st of November 2017, dropped by his party, the army, and the people. When he died, after 37 years of undivided rule, Zimbabwe still had not recovered from the economic collapse that ravaged the country.
Tensions ease between twin African powerhouses, South Africa and Nigeria, after Pretoria temporarily closed its diplomatic missions in the rival state following a wave of attacks on foreign-owned stores there that claimed 10 lives. South African President Cyril Ramaphosa said earlier that at least 10 people were killed, including one foreign national, while dozens of shops were destroyed in xenophobic violence in and around Johannesburg this week, triggering angry demonstrations in several African countries. Foreign workers often face anti-immigrant sentiment in South Africa, where they compete against locals for jobs, particularly in low-skilled industries.
No amount of anger and frustration and grievance can justify such acts of wanton destruction and criminality. There can be no excuse for the attacks on the homes and businesses of foreign nationals.
Nigeria, the source of many of the workers in South Africa, has stepped up security after apparent reprisal attacks, while violence also flared in the Democratic Republic of Congo on Thursday. In Nigeria, South Africa's embassy in the capital Abuja and consulate in the economic hub of Lagos were shot on Wednesday. South Africa's foreign ministry called the decision a precautionary measure. South African telecoms giant MTN temporarily closed its Nigeria outlets on Wednesday after protesters attacked South African-owned firms in several cities. And in another outbreak on Thursday, angry crowds in Democratic Republic of Congo's second-largest city, Lubumbashi, smashed the windows of the South African consulate and looted South African-owned stores. In the capital, Kinshasa, youths tried to attack the South African headquartered supermarket chain, ShopRite, which has outlets across Africa. Meanwhile, Madagascar's national football team called off a friendly match with South Africa this weekend because of security concerns. It was the second time South Africa's Bafana Bafana were cancelled on this week after Zambia turned down a match on Wednesday for similar reasons. Philippine authorities have charged an Ohio woman with trying to smuggle a 6-day-old infant out of the country in a bag she wore around her waist as she tried to board a flight out of the country. 42-year-old Jennifer Talbot had no valid custody documents for the child, but managed to make it through security and immigration before personnel at the departure gate confronted her at Manila's International Airport on Wednesday. National Bureau of Investigation officials said she was carrying an infant baby boy inside a sling bag as she attempted to depart for a connecting flight on her journey back to the United States. Talbot did provide a notarized consent form following her arrest, but it wasn't signed by the baby's mother. Prosecutors charged Talbot on Thursday with human trafficking, which, if convicted, could send her to prison for decades. Officials told reporters at a press conference as Talbot stood by in orange jail clothes. The baby is with special services now. The common-law wife of a person deprived of liberty at the New Bilibid prison said she paid 50,000 pesos to facilitate the release of her husband. Now, this was amid reports that personnel at the Bucor, or Bureau of Corrections, were using the good conduct time allowance system to extort money. Yolanda Camelon appeared before the Senate Blue Ribbon Committee to narrate her first-hand experience.
Please
She said she paid 50,000 pesos to Major Mabel Bansil and Staff Sergeant Ramoncito Roque. Camelon also said she decided to testify because the Bucor personnel failed to deliver their promise to free her husband early, which was supposed to be March 1st.
Sinabi niya sa akin na pwedeng mapaiksi natin yung serving of sentence ng asawa mo. Sabi ko, in what way, ma'am? Yun nga lang magastos. Paano po yung gastos na yun? Meron siyang binanggit na certain amount na 50,000. Sabi ko sa kanya, paano po ba ang sistema natin yan? Ito naman, ma'am, hindi naman to agad-agad yung ibibigay. Kung wala kayong pera, pwede naman tong staggered. Natuwa po ako kasi meron palang hulugan na pwede kong kayanin. Time to time, from nag-usap kami ni Major Mabel, nagpa-follow up na po sa akin through by phone si Boday, kung tawagin nila sa loob, at it is Veronica Buno. Pina-follow up niya po yung perang kukunin nila sa akin. And lately, nung sa pangungulit niya sa akin, naisipan ko na pong i-record to my phone yung conversation namin.
Ano i-record mo?
Opo. At sinasabi doon, tinatanong niya nga po kung kailan ko may bibigay yung pera. Ang sabi ko, hindi pa dumadating yung perang hinihintay ko. Magkano po yung on-hand cash niyo dyan na hawak niyo? Baka pwede naman pong pag-usapan. Sabi ko, meron akong 10,000 dito. So, okay na po yan kahit yan na po ang ipauna.
Now, Mrs. Camelon said she gave the 50,000 pesos in 3 installments in February 2019, 10,000 as down payment, followed by 20,000, and finally by another 20,000. Mrs. Camelon said she, accompanied by Bansil, handed over an envelope containing 10,000 to a certain Sir Chito, who was identified to be Ramoncito Roque, chief of the Bucor Inmates Documents Processing Division.
Hindi na po niya binilang, basta tinignan po niya, nakita niya na nandun po yung pera. Tapos mayroon po siyang pinakuhang document sa akin na hindi ko dala, so malapit lang yung tinutuluyan ko dun sa bahay niya. Umalis po ako saglit, nagpaalam ako sa kanya, sir, nasa bahay ka ko yung documents na yun, kukunin ko.
Ano yung dokumento na yan?
Yung pong synopsis na parang nandun po naka-indicate yung mga prison record. So, kinuha ko po yun. Pagbalik ko sa kanya, sa bahay nila, nasalubong ko na po si Mama Bel sa labas, sa pintuan ng bahay niya, at sinabi, sige mami, okay na po. Basta hintayin na lang po natin yung paglabas ni sir. Nagkita po ulit kami doon. Pinasobre niya ulit sa akin yung pera dun sa envelope na brown na po nailagay. Sabi niya, andito yung document ng asawa mo. Yung papers ng asawa mo nandito, dito mo na ilagay. So nilagay ko po yun.
Magkano nilagay niyo?
20 po nung una.
20,000?
Opo. Per a minute lang po siguro kasi lunchtime na naman. Dumaan na po yung service ni Sir Chito. Tumigil siya doon sa tapat nung bulaluhan. Lumapit sa kanya si Ma'am Mabel. Tapos, inaabot yung envelope, hindi po niya tinanggap. Bumalik po si Ma'am Mabel sa amin, doon po sa lamesa namin. Ang sabi niya, dadaanan na lang daw ni Sir Chito doon sa bahay ni Ma'am Mabel. Hindi na natupad yung March, April, June na usapan. Na June sana talagang definite na po sana yun ng asawa ko, pero hindi pa rin nila na-release. Binabawi ko na po talaga yung pera. Hindi kayo tumupad sa usapan. Yung perang yan, inutang ko, sabi ko po sa kanila, ibabalik ko na lang sa pinagkautangan ko para hindi lumakad yung interest. Nagtuturoan na po sila ni Sir Chito, tinutulak ako kay Ma'am Mabel. Pagdating kay Ma'am Mabel, tuturo na naman niya ako kay Sir Chito. The last time, sabi ni Sir Chito, tatawagan ko si Mabel, magharap-harap tayong tatlo na nakatunayan nasa kanya na uli yung pera. Na hindi naman po nangyayari. Kinukuha ni Sir Chito yung number ko, nag-aantay ako, sabi niya mamayang gabi, mamayang hapon, or bukas, harap-harap tayo ni Ma'am Mabel na hindi naman po nangyari. Sir, pakibalik na lang yung pera, kasi inutang ko lang yan. Hirap na ako, ultimo sinaing, wala na kami magamit ng asawa ko. Nagmakaawa na po ako sa kanya. Para kako hindi na tayo magka-problema pare-pareho. Nagkaroon na naman ng promises.
In the GCTA scheme for sale scheme, Camelon alleged that some have reportedly given 300,000 pesos based on her husband's account. She also said she personally knows 10 or 20 others who have also shelled out cash to facilitate the early release of their relatives from the National Penitentiary. She said she gave the 50,000 in 3 installments in February. Staff Sergeant Ramoncito Roque confirmed that Yolanda Camelon and Major Mabel Bansil went to his house and forced him to accept the 10,000, but he said he returned the money after a few days.
Hindi po dala, so malapit lang yung tinutuluyan ko dun sa bahay niya. Umalis po ako.
Your Honor, ilang days po na hinanap po sila, yun po, sinoli ko po sa...
Sinoli nyo? Naisoli nyo rin, allocate nyo si Miss Jolie. Miss Jolie, tama po ba yun?
Wala po, sir, na ibalik sa akin.
Meantime, Justice Secretary Menardo Guevara confirmed that an investigation would be undertaken on possible irregularities in the computation of good conduct time allowance, or GCTA, on the prisoners' remaining sentences. In a chance interview, Mr. Guevara said he believes such anomalies happen inside the Bucor, but he noted that an investigation will come only after the Senate has concluded its own legislative inquiry. The GCTA, which is granted to qualified inmates with good behavior, is provided for under Republic Act 10592. The scheme caused an uproar following reports that former Calauan Mayor Antonio Sanchez, who's serving 7 life terms for the rape and murder of college student Eileen Sarmenta and the killing of her friend Alan Gomez in Laguna, was ordered release. Sanchez's release order dated August 20, 2019 was recalled. And the news continues here on Eagle News. We'll be right back. Stay tuned.
Ang pagtaas ng kaso ng dengue sa bansa. Kaya naman, mahalagang alamin ang mga sintomas para sa agarang aksyon. Gaya ng lagnat, pananakit sa likod ng mata, pananakit ng ulo, rashes, pagsusuka, at pananakit at pamamaga ng mga kasukasuan. Kapag may lagnat ng lagpas ng 2 araw, magpakonsulta agad.
Tungkulin ng MTRCV ang mag-provide na appropriate
Hong Kong's reputation as a dependable financial hub took a hit on Friday after Fitch downgraded the city's sovereign rating, citing ongoing protests and uncertainty caused by closer integration with the Chinese mainland. In a statement on Friday, Fitch announced it was downgrading the city as an issuer of long-term foreign currency debt from an AA plus rating to AA with a negative outlook. Bloomberg News reported that it is the first time the credit rating agency has made such a move since 1995, a period when uncertainty spiked over the city's handover to China. Fitch said, quote, ongoing events have inflicted long-lasting damage to international perceptions of the quality and effectiveness of Hong Kong's governance system and rule of law, and have called into question the stability and dynamism of its business environment. It added, the gradual rise in Hong Kong's economic, financial, and socio-political linkages with the mainland implies its continued integration into China's national governance system, which will present greater institutional and regulatory challenges over time. Hong Kong Chief Executive Carrie Lam disagreed with Fitch's downgrade as the one country, two systems framework and the city's spirit of rule of law haven't been weakened by the months of turmoil. Mrs. Lam said at a briefing in Guangxi province that, quote, unrest inevitably affects enterprises' confidence in Hong Kong and foreigners' view on Hong Kong. Hong Kong's Hang Seng Index brushed off the news, ending Friday 0.66% higher. German Chancellor Angela Merkel was welcomed by the Premier of the State Council of the People's Republic of China, Li Keqiang, outside the Great Hall of the People in Beijing on Friday. At the start of her meeting with Chinese Premier Li Keqiang, German Chancellor Angela Merkel said that the ongoing trade spat between China and the U.S. and the ensuing tit-for-tat tariffs has had an adverse effect on other countries as well. The German economy is on the brink of recession after contracting in the second quarter of the year due to weakened exports. At the same time, the Chinese economy is growing at the slowest pace in almost 3 decades as it reels from U.S. tariffs on hundreds of billions of dollars worth of goods. Merkel, who is leading a large business delegation to Beijing, also said she hoped an EU-China investment agreement would be finalized soon. Chinese Premier Li Keqiang, meanwhile, said he hopes that Germany will accept more Chinese companies and loosen export rules for certain goods. Merkel said Germany is open for Chinese investment and welcomed all Chinese firms to invest in the country. But the Chancellor also said Berlin scrutinizes investments in certain strategic sectors and critical infrastructure. German Chancellor Angela Merkel also brought up the rights and freedoms of people in Hong Kong, and she said Hong Kong freedom must be guaranteed. Merkel said she discussed Hong Kong with Premier Li and that there needed to be a peaceful solution for the city. Mr. Li, meanwhile, answered, and he said Beijing wanted to prevent unrest in the former British colony, which has been convulsed by protests in the past few weeks. UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson said that he would rather be dead in a ditch than ask for another Brexit extension from the EU while giving a speech in Wakefield on Thursday. Commenting on the ongoing attempts to pass a bill to block a no-deal Brexit in the UK's Parliament, the Prime Minister said that unfortunately Parliament voted yesterday effectively to scupper the negotiating power and to make much more difficult for the government to get a deal. Take a look.
I really don't see how we can have a situation in which the British ability to negotiate is absolutely torpedoed by Parliament in this way, with powers of the British people handed over to Brussels so that we can be kept incarcerated in the EU without that actually being put to the people in the form of a vote. And you know, time and time again, Jeremy Corbyn, don't worry, I'm going to end very soon. All right. Oh, that's all right. I'm so sorry. Okay, that is a signal for me actively to wind up. Okay.
Can you make a promise today to the British public that you will not go back to Brussels and ask for another delay to Brexit?
Yes.
And so.
I can.
And would you
I'd rather be dead in a ditch. Discipline is always.
Meanwhile, UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson welcomed US Vice President Mike Pence to 10 Downing Street in London. US Vice President Mike Pence said the US is ready to immediately negotiate a trade deal with the UK and that the US supports its move to leave the EU. Comments welcomed by the embattled Boris Johnson. Let's listen in.
I spoke to President Trump this morning, your friend, and he asked me to send you his very best greetings and to assure you that the United States supports the United Kingdom's decision to leave the European Union, but he also wanted me to convey that the United States is ready, willing, and able to immediately negotiate a free trade agreement with the UK. And we truly believe that a free trade agreement between the United States and the UK could increase trade between our countries by 3 or 4 times. We're anxious to do that. We're anxious to stand with you and to do everything in our power to strengthen what has been a historic and special relationship.
Know that you guys are pretty tough negotiators. So we're gonna work very hard to make sure that that free trade deal is one that works for all sides.
Fashion giant H&M announced it was suspending leather purchases from Brazil in response to the Amazon fires that have provoked a global outcry. The ban comes after US-based VF Corporation, which owns a string of brands including Timberland, Vans, and The North Face, announced late last month it would no longer buy leather from Brazil over concerns about the destruction of the world's largest rainforest. H&M said it was imposing a temporary freeze on orders until it had confidence the leather was not causing environmental harm. Due to the severe fires in the Brazilian part of the Amazon rainforest and the connections to cattle production, we have decided to place a temporary ban on leather from Brazil, the Swedish clothing retail firm said in a statement. It said the ban will be active until there are credible assurance systems in place to verify the leather does not contribute to environmental harm in the Amazon. H&M was last year among dozens of top fashion industry firms to pledge at UN climate talks to reduce their combined greenhouse gas emissions by 30% by 2030. And our Eagle News correspondent Greg Bessa takes us to New Zealand, where the Philippine Embassy, in coordination with the Department of Trade and Industry, launched a series of franchising seminars. Greg?
Many political and economic experts, either based in the Philippines or overseas, are claiming that Filipinos who are living and working abroad are a potential source of untapped capital for many business and investment undertakings, which may serve as an engine of economic growth for the Philippines. But though they have the basic and necessary business skills and knowledge to start, sustain, and even expand a business and investment of their choice, the Philippine Embassy here in New Zealand is conducting a series of franchising seminars aimed at encouraging entrepreneurship among the Filipinos and Kiwinois in this country.
The Philippine Embassy conducted the third franchising seminar in the Wellington region on the 2nd of September at the Filipino Community Center in Hat City. This seminar is part of the Trabajo, Negosyo, Kabuhayan Entrepreneurship Program, which is a Philippine government initiative led by the Department of Trade and Industry in partnership with the private sector, academe, and civil society organizations to increase incomes by generating more jobs and promoting entrepreneurship. Among others, it aims to encourage entrepreneurship among overseas Filipinos by providing them the necessary information, resources, and contact that will help them succeed as entrepreneurs. Philippine Ambassador Gary Domingo himself lauded the government's initiative in introducing entrepreneurship to Filipinos abroad, particularly those in New Zealand, through the franchising seminar, which was already held in Auckland and Christchurch, and now in Wellington. On the part of Consul Kervin de Pera Lakay, who assisted the Philippine ambassador in coordinating with the Department of Trade and Industry for the conduct of such seminar, also commended such initiative as he urged the Filipinos in New Zealand to take advantage of the franchising seminar, which will be further offered in other places of the country.
We've successfully concluded the third seminar on franchising as part of the Philippine government's Trabaho, Negosyo, Kabuhayan program, which seeks to encourage both Filipinos at home and overseas to become entrepreneurs. So the first session on franchising was held in Auckland, followed by Christchurch, and now this evening in Wellington, and it's led by Mr. Rudolf Kotik, an Austrian who's been in the Philippines and settled in the Philippines and has been promoting franchising for nearly 4 decades and has developed franchises or helped Filipinos and international clients develop franchises. So this evening, we've invited the Filipino community and friends in the Wellington region here at the Bulwagam Filipino Center here in Lower Hutt, and he went over the background and the ins and outs of actually setting up a franchise in the Philippines, or also could help introduce Filipino franchises here in New Zealand. So this is just the first of a new series of activities of the Embassy for Trabaho, Negosyo, Kabuhayan, which is being coordinated by the Department of Trade and Industry.
The TNK seminar, which stands for Trabaho, Negosyo, Kabuhayan, job, business, and livelihood, is a program of the Philippine government spearheaded by the Department of Trade and Industry to encourage Filipinos and even businessmen abroad to help contribute to the growth of the Philippines through entrepreneurship. We have been running this program from the first one was in Auckland, and then because of the positive results that we got, the feedback that we got from our participants in Auckland, we have decided to run it also in Christchurch and in Wellington.
The resource speaker of the seminar was Mr. Rudolf Kotik, who has more than 38 years of franchise management experience and has able to develop more than 700 franchise companies in the Philippines and 200 more in other countries. During the seminar, Mr. Kotik discussed the business opportunities in franchising, including all its related information, such as logistic and capital requirements, paperwork, and monetary rewards in terms of profits and royalties. He even identified some of the growing and profitable businesses in the Philippines that are now open for franchising, as he invited the attendees to have a closer look in doing such kind of business.
Introduce to you franchising as an opportunity to either expand your own business, if you have one, become a franchisor and expand it through franchising, or if you have money to invest, to become a franchisee, either in the Philippines, way back home, or New Zealand, or anywhere in the world. Franchising is the best way to invest the money because it's the safest way, since you get training, you get opening assistance, you get operations manual, you have a backup support from your franchisor.
Filipinos in New Zealand are known to be diligent and hardworking. The fact of the matter is, many of them are working for 2 or more jobs, but only a handful of them are engaging into businesses. As the Philippine Embassy continues to conduct a series of franchising seminars, this may unlock the entrepreneurship spirit in the Filipino community across the country. From Lower Hutt, Wellington Region, New Zealand, this is Greg Besa. I am and will always be one with 25.
Phone numbers linked to more than 400 million Facebook accounts were listed online in the latest privacy lapse for the social media giant, according to U.S. media. An exposed server stored 419 million records on users across several databases, including 133 million U.S. accounts, more than 50 million in Vietnam, and 18 million in Britain, according to technology news site TechCrunch. The databases listed Facebook user IDs, unique digits attached to each account, the profile's phone numbers, as well as the gender listed by some accounts and their geographical locations. Technology website TechCrunch reported this. And the server was not password protected, meaning anyone could access the databases, and remained online until late Wednesday when TechCrunch contacted the site's host. Facebook confirmed parts of the report but downplayed the extent of the exposure, saying that the number of accounts so far confirmed was around half of the reported 419 million. It also added that many of the entries were duplicates and that the data was old. The data set has been taken down and we have seen no evidence that Facebook accounts were compromised, a Facebook spokesperson told AFP. Following the 2018 Cambridge Analytica scandal, when a firm used Facebook's lax privacy settings to access millions of users' personal details, the company disabled a feature that allowed users to search the platform by phone numbers. The exposure of a user's phone number leaves them vulnerable to spam calls, SIM swapping, as recently happened to Twitter CEO Jack Dorsey, with hackers able to force reset the passwords of the compromised accounts. The World Health Organization, or WHO, has welcomed a commitment by Facebook to ensure that users across all of its platforms get the right facts on vaccination. Vaccine misinformation is a major threat to global health that could reverse decades of progress made in tackling preventable diseases. For several months, WHO and Facebook have been discussing how people can access authoritative information on vaccines. And now, Instagram, Facebook search groups, pages, and forums where people search for information and advice will direct its users to a WHO information site so they can access factual advice in several languages. Concerted global efforts are required to spread the rapidly expanding digital economy's gains to the many people who currently reap little benefit from it, according to the new United Nations report. Presenting the UN Conference on Trade and Development, or UNCTAD, Digital Economy Report 2019, the director of UNCTAD's Division of Technology and Logistics, Shamika Sirimain, said the global digital wealth is concentrated around a small number of individuals and companies in US and China. Take a look.
When we normally talk about development, we always talk about developed countries and developing countries, and that divide does not apply to the digital economy. In terms of wealth creation, it is basically a tale of two countries, United States of America and China. Together, these two countries account for 90% of the market value of the world's largest digital platform companies. Europe's share in the platforms, these mega platforms, are only 3.6%. And Africa owns 1.3% of platforms. So this divide between developed countries, developing countries, does not exist. And China and the United States have 75% of all patents related to blockchain technologies and more than 75% of cloud computing market. And these two countries also present half the global spending on Internet of Things. The combined value of the platform companies, the big ones, grew by 67% between 2015 and 2017, 67% growth in the platform economies. We looked at Google and Facebook, and we find 60% of their profits are created outside the United States. But 90% of taxes are paid in the US. So in this report, we call for more work on effective taxation. And also we look at the policies to protect workers online.
The report also said governments have a critical role in shaping the digital economy by defining the rules of the game. The report notes this involves the adaptation of existing policies, laws and regulations, and the adoption of new ones in many areas. Policy responses need to consider increased difficulties of enforcing national laws and regulations with respect to cross-border trade in digital services and products, the report recommends. Further, they should explore new pathways for local value creation and capture and structural transformation through digitalization. Digital technology connects people across the world and provides low-cost access to information. It can also improve educational opportunities and access to medical services via remote digital services. And tech giant Samsung has said it will launch its hotly anticipated first foldable smartphone on Friday, months after faulty screens forced an embarrassing delay of its release. Take a look.
이제 폴드까지 내놨다고 하면은 이제 폴드보다는 애플보다는 더욱더 많은 도전을 하고 있다고 생각을 해서 지금 이렇게 도전을 해야만 또 다른 것이 나오지 않을까. 그 선두가 이미 삼성이 하고 있지 않을까라는 생각을 하기 때문에 저는 기대가 많이 되고 있습니다.
The world's largest smartphone maker spent nearly 8 years developing the Galaxy Fold but had to hold its launch in April after reviewers reported screen problems within days of use. It was a major setback for the firm, which was hoping to spark demand for its high-end phones with the launch of the $2,000 device, with profits plunging in recent quarters in the face of a weakened market and strong competition from Chinese rivals. After months of refining the Galaxy Fold, which is ready for use on high-speed 5G networks in some markets, Samsung said it will release the smartphone in South Korea on Friday, followed by select countries including the United States, Germany, and France. The firm will also offer a program to Galaxy Fold users under which the company would cover 70% of the cost of screen repair once within a year of use. Samsung Electronics shares closed up 3.6% in Seoul. The Galaxy Fold has been widely promoted as the world's first foldable smartphone, while rivals such as China's Huawei have been racing to bring similar devices to market. Samsung has a history of humiliating setbacks with major products, most notably a worldwide recall of its Galaxy Note 7 devices in 2016 over exploding batteries, which hammered its reputation. The firm has also been caught up in the intensifying trade war between Japan and South Korea stemming from World War II disputes. The row saw Tokyo impose tough restrictions on exports crucial to South Korean tech giants in July, and Samsung Vice Chairman Lee Jae-yong, who called the situation a crisis, has visited Tokyo to secure materials. Analysts have said the trade dispute will affect the delivery of Samsung products, among them the Galaxy Fold, as it relies on a chemical film produced by Japanese firm Sumitomo Chemical. And Sony unveiled its latest flagship smartphone, the Xperia 5, on stage at the 59th International Consumer Electronics Fair 2019, or IFA, on Thursday in Berlin. Take a look.
Today, we are proud to unveil a new addition to our Xperia flagship series, which packs Sony's world-class technologies into a compact body. Xperia 5 delivers compelling creative entertainment experiences to appeal to even more users than ever. It combines a beautiful 6.1-inch Full HD OLED cinema-wide display in a stylish form factor in 4 elegant colors.
The new phone comes with a 15-centimeter, or as he said, 6.1-inch OLED screen with a tall cinema-wide viewing angle and a new Snapdragon 855 processor. The Xperia 5's triple lens rear camera design houses a main 12-megapixel sensor with an f1.6 aperture 12mm lens, and there's also a 52mm f2.4 telescopic lens and a 16mm f2.4 wide-angle lens. On the software side, Sony says the phone is equipped with the same eye-autofocus technology as its alpha cameras. The Xperia 5 will be available to pre-order in Europe starting next week and is expected to be available starting in October. And finally, in our news, the owner of famed French Rooster, Maurice, emerged victorious on Thursday from a legal battle with her neighbors over his early morning crowing, with the court upholding the bird's right to sing in the day. The case brought by the neighbors of Maurice's owner, Corinne Fessau, has made headlines around the world, seen as symptomatic of the tensions in the countryside between rural folk and holiday home owners. The judge ruled that the plaintiffs, a couple of 68-year-olds from Oloron, western France, who sued the cock and its owner for waking them up at dawn, will still not be able to sleep in and must pay $1,100 in damages as well as their legal fees.
T'as gagné ton procès. Tu te rends compte? Le combat que t'as fait, c'est trop bien. Et eux, ils ont perdu. Ouais, t'es beau, t'es gentil.
The court castigated the Byrons for bringing what it called a frivolous case, saying they should have tried to settle the matter amicably. In many rural areas in France, some villagers resent richer urbanites buying up property in declining farming villages, which played into the fierce Yellow Vest anti-government protests that erupted around the country last November. Across the country, several rural mayors also chimed in to declare cock-a-doodle-doo and other typical countryside sounds a national heritage exempt from noise complaints. And with that, we end tonight's program. For everyone here on Eagle News International, I'm Alma Angeles. Always one with 25. Good night.